Hey everyone, today we are doing a recap of my personal favorite movie named Shutter Island. This psychological thriller film directed by Martin Scorsese will take you through twists and turns, and as always, spoilers ahead, so watch out, and take care. The movie is set in 1954 and U.S. Marshal Teddy Daniels has been asked to investigate the disappearance of a patient from the Ashcliffe Hospital for the Criminally Insane, located on Shutter Island. Teddy finds himself in the company of his new partner, Chuck Alley, a recent transfer from the Seattle Bureau of the U.S. Marshals. Teddy briefs Chuck on their assignment as they make their way to the island. Teddy explains that Ashcliffe is a federal hospital reserved for the criminally insane, and that all the patients are both mentally ill and dangerous. To make the situation more difficult, a tropical storm is rolling in. The storm will hit the island within hours of their arrival, and it will ultimately trap them there for the next few days. Teddy and Chuck arrive at Shutter Island and are immediately frowned upon by the guards there. They make their way to Ashcliffe Hospital and are ordered to surrender their firearms as the deputy explains that there are 3 wards. Ward A, for males, Ward B for females, and Ward C, the extremely dangerous inmates. That if they want to enter Ward C they need both the deputy and head doctor to come along. They meet with Dr. John Colley, the lead doctor, who explains the situation. Sometime the night before, Rachel Solando escaped her room and is still missing. Teddy asks for some aspirin as he is feeling a bit seasick. Teddy and Chuck then begin their investigation by interviewing the staff member on duty at the time. The only clue they uncover about Rachel's whereabouts is a written code she left behind, which Teddy and Chuck see as the Law of 4. They then help the deputy with the search on the island. They notice a lighthouse and ask to see what's inside. The deputy doesn't allow them, but it seems to be heavily guarded for some reason. That night, the marshals interview staff, but problematically, they have no answers. They seem awkward in answering the questions and look as if they are lying. The following morning, patients who were in Rachel's group therapy session were interviewed. Most of them are unhelpful and unable to even understand. The only exception was a woman named Bridget. She quickly writes a one-word message on Teddy's notepad, "Run." Afterward, Chuck asks Teddy why he asked every patient about a man named Andrew Latus. Teddy confesses that Latus is the mentally ill arsonist who started the fire that inevitably killed his wife, Dolores. Teddy is certain he is at Ashcliffe despite there being no record of him, so Chuck suggests they check the graveyard, to see whether or not he might have died. On the way to the cemetery, Teddy and Chuck discuss that something is amiss on this island. The weather worsens rapidly, and Teddy and Chuck have to take shelter in the mausoleum. While there, Teddy tells Chuck the full truth of his mission. An inmate named George Noyce told Teddy about inhumane and illegal experiments happening at Ashcliffe. Teddy has been sent by a U.S. senator to investigate Noyce's claims and expose any wrongdoing. Chuck tells Teddy that he believes they have walked into a trap. He also tells Chuck about how he was a vet and fought against the Germans. He starts saying stories of the piles of dead women and children that he saw. He begins getting flashbacks of the hundreds of deaths he witnessed during the World War. The hurricane leaves the marshals stranded in the graveyard and on the island. Teddy and Chuck finally return from the graveyard and start grilling all the head doctors. Teddy says that there are 66 patients on the island and the letter from Rachel suggests there is 67. The doctors act dumb and go off topic telling Teddy that Rachel Solando has mysteriously reappeared. They go to interview her, and she mistakes Teddy for her husband, Jim. Teddy gets sucked into her delusion, but the illusion shatters when Rachel suddenly realizes Teddy is a stranger. She attacks him, which triggers one of Teddy's new migraines. He becomes very sensitive to light and cannot even stand. Colley forces him to take some more medicine to alleviate the pain, and Teddy takes them against his better judgment. He lays down and that night he has some twisted nightmares. Seeing piles of dead bodies that have been covered with frost, he turns around and a lady and child look at him and say, "You should have saved us." He then goes into a room where he meets Latus. The scarred face and obsession to fire is immediately seen as the dream comes to an end. The storm passes through, but it has caused major damage. Teddy and Chuck seize the opportunity to explore Ward C, where the most dangerous patients are held. Once there, Teddy and Chuck split up. Teddy searches for Latus while Chuck tries to find patient files. Teddy finds George Noyce instead, who warns him that everything around him is an elaborate hoax put on by Colley. That Latus has been transferred elsewhere and Chuck works for Ashcliffe and not to trust him. Teddy and Chuck then decide to investigate the lighthouse. Teddy goes to look at the best route to get to the lighthouse, but he returns to find Chuck missing. When Teddy looks down the cliff he sees Chuck's body flat on the shore. He immediately starts climbing down the cliff. At the bottom he cannot see Chuck, but witnesses hundreds of rats. He notices a fire in a cave and goes through the rats to get inside. There he meets a woman claiming to be Rachel Solando. She says she was a doctor at Ashcliffe, not a patient. She tells him that he will never be allowed to leave the island and that she was forced to flee when she uncovered the hospital's illegal experiments onto patients. She tells Teddy that he has been drugged and they're going to turn him into a patient as seen on the files. She gives him the list of symptoms he is experiencing from the so-called aspirin. She says symptoms such as weird dreams and sleeplessness, many of which he is already experiencing. The next morning he leaves the cave and returns to Ashcliff. He finds Kali, who tells him that his work is done here. Teddy asks if he's seen Chuck and Kali tells him he arrived on Shutter Island alone. Teddy plays along with Kali so he can escape in the middle of the night, fully intending to catch the morning ferry to the mainland. After returning to his room, he tries to escape and go to the dock. He encounters another doctor who grabs a needle, but Teddy subdues him and stabs him with it instead. Teddy then runs outside, hiding from staff. He believes Kali and the warden have figured his plan to leave. He can see his dead wife right in front of him talking to him. Him believing this is a side effect from the drugs lights the car on fire. He watches it blow up with his wife holding a child's hand in front of the fire. He then makes his way to the lighthouse to save Chuck. After scaling the wall and swimming to the lighthouse, he knocks out the guard and goes inside. After climbing the stairs and finding empty rooms, he goes to the last room and finds Kali sitting there waiting for him. He tells Teddy that Rachel Solando is a figment of his imagination and the symptoms he has is from a withdrawal from being on the medication for 24 months. Teddy is confused and then Kali tells him he is Andrew Latus. He builds a convincing case by showing him that his gun is a toy. He then rearranges his name and Rachel Solando to be his dead wife. He introduces Dr. Lester Sheehan, who has been pretending to be Chuck the whole time. Kali explains that Dolores was mentally ill and killed Teddy's 3 children, and Teddy, who is actually Latus, shot her in the stomach. Unable to cope with what he had done, Teddy became a delusional psychopath and was sent to Ashcliff. Teddy, being the most violent inmate, has been given one chance to get through his delusions or he will be killed. It is not until he goes to sleep and dreams. He remembers that he came home to his children missing. He then sees them in the water, but it is too late. He shoots his wife in the stomach, killing her. When he wakes up, he admits that he is Andrew Latus. At the end of the film, we question whether we should believe Teddy's story that he is a marshal who stumbled on a government cover-up, or Kali's narrative, in which Teddy is a delusional murderer. In the final scene, they ask if Teddy remembers his name and what has happened so that he doesn't get lobotomized. And he says one of my favorite quotes.
Which would be worse? To live as a monster, or to die as a good man?
Dr. Sheehan then gives a no to the other doctors and sadly they take Teddy away to kill him. I do hope you enjoyed this recap of the best psychological thriller movie I have ever seen. Subscribe to be updated with movies like this. Thank you.